Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for watching Dog Football. Today I'm going to be giving you guys 3 predictions that I have for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2021. But first, make sure you guys subscribe, hit the bell, and let me know down in the comments what your predictions are for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2021 season. Let's go. Alright, so like I said, I have 3 predictions for you guys. One of them is a little bit more bold than the other 2, but all of them are likely to happen or could happen. Alright, so my first prediction is Jermaine Burton will have over 1,000 yards receiving. There's only one other wide receiver that's ever surpassed 1,000 yards at UGA, and that was Terrence Edwards back in 2002. For his senior season, he had 1,004 yards receiving, but he is the only wide receiver, and yes, you heard that correctly. We've only had one wide receiver ever go over 1,000 yards receiving. That includes wide receivers such as Hines Ward, A.J. Green, Muhammad Massaquoi, Tavares King, UJ Greats. We've only had one that's ever done that. But if you look at the offense that we have this year with Todd Monken, JT Daniels, and people like Jermaine Burton, our offense is probably going to be a lot more prolific than it has in the past. So I think Jermaine Burton is going to be able to have a very successful season. If you look what happened last year, and those last 4 games, he had a almost like a coming out party against Mississippi State with JT Daniels, both of them really. Jermaine Burton was one of those go-to guys for JT Daniels at the end of the season. If you go back and look at his total, all of his receptions and yards for the 2020 season, he had 27 receptions for 404 yards receiving. The majority of these, like I said, came from games played with JT Daniels under center. Now with JT Daniels having a full spring, summer, and fall to build chemistry with Burton, I expect him to have a huge breakout year in 2021. My second prediction is Georgia will have 3 running backs go over 400 yards rushing. This one's a bit bold. Now, it may not sound like a bold prediction or a claim, but here's why I think it might be. If we expect JT Daniels to be as good as we expect him to be coming into the season, we won't have to rely as heavily on the run as we did back in like 2017 with Chubb and Michelle. So I expect more passing yards for less rushing yards. I think there's going to be I think we're going to rely heavily or more heavily on the passing game than we have in the past. So I don't think we're going to have as many rushing yards as we probably would have back a couple of years ago. With that being said, we still have 4 to 5 guys that could start for us this year. You could put any of the 4 guys that we have, that Zamir White, James Cook, Kendall Milton, Kenny McIntosh, Dejon Edwards. You could put any of those 5 guys starting. You can start any of those guys, and there's not going to be a drop-off in talent or quality of play. So I expect a heavy rotation with the run game. They're going to divide those opportunities between White, Cook, McIntosh, Milton, Edwards. So there's going to be a pretty big rotation of all of those 5 guys getting the ball. So if we look at what happened last year between all 5 running backs, they had a total of 1,744 rushing yards. They finished in this order. Zamir White with 779 yards. He came in first. James Cook came in second with 303 yards. There's a pretty big drop-off from first to second, which I'll touch on in a second here. Kenny McIntosh had 251 yards. Dejon Edwards had 218. And Kendall Milton finished last with 193. So there's more of a drop-off between first to second and below. You have Zamir White close to 800 yards and James Cook with 300 yards. So there's about a 500-yard difference there between first and second place. But I think this year is going to be more equal. If you go back and look at Michelle and Chubb, their rushing yards were pretty similar. There wasn't much of a big drastic difference in the two. Chubb and Michelle kind of had similar numbers because they got equal carries pretty much. But with all these different guys, you're going to have different touches, different numbers, different things like that. So I think, but with this year, I think there's going to be more of an equal split between carries and rushing yards and stuff like that. I think if I were to guess who those 3 guys that are going to go over 400 yards rushing, I would predict Zamir White, Kenny McIntosh, and Kendall Milton. I think it's going to be hard to keep the ball out of the hands of some of these guys. Zamir White is more experienced. He's been here longer, of course, but I don't think that you can keep the ball out of people like Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton who can make really good plays on the field. Now, you may be wondering, why didn't he say James Cook? He's been with the program for a long time. You know, a lot of people are expecting him to have a breakout year. That is true. But I expect James Cook to have more of a bigger role than just being a running back. I think he's going to have more all-purpose yards. I don't think it's going to be just rushing. This is more of a prediction for just rushing yards. I think if we're looking at just rushing, I don't think James Cook is going to be used as much as, you know, Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Millen. I think those guys are going to be more they're going to run the ball more than like James Cook, who, if you go back and look at that game against Alabama, when Stetson Bennett threw the ball to him down the field, you know, he had I forgot how big of a touchdown that was, but it was a deep ball to James Cook, caught it sort of like a wide receiver, and had a touchdown. And I think they're going to use him like that this year. You know, Todd Monken being behind the offense, controlling the offense, I think they're going to use him in a lot of creative ways. You look at, you know, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who played for LSU in that 2019 championship team. He had a huge role, not just rushing, but in the passing game. And I think the same thing is going to be said for Cook. And, you know, that has been the case for Cook, you know, the past couple of years. He's been used in the passing game. But I think you're definitely going to see that this year. I think he's going to have a very good breakout year. But when it comes to just rushing yards, I think there's going to be 3 guys that go over 400 yards rushing. I don't think that Zamir White's going to have as many rushing yards as he did last year. I think it's going to be more equally, you know, split. And it could end up like last year. You may have Zamir White with a huge amount of yards, and then there's a drop-off to second. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. I kind of have 3 guys kind of sitting around the same area. Maybe 2. Maybe it's 2, but I went with 3. I think 3 guys are going to go over 400 yards. I expect breakout years for all of our running backs, to be honest. I think it's going to be a really good year for the running backs. All right, so my third and final prediction that I have is I think Georgia will finish the year with number 1 defense. Now, this is probably the most believable because it's been true. I think Georgia's had one of the best defenses the past couple of years, and there's not really a debate about that. You look at the numbers and everything, Georgia's had one of the best defenses by far. And Georgia returns a lot of superstar talent this year. Now, obviously, we lost some DBs to the NFL, transfer portal, stuff like that. But Kirby Smart went out to transfer portal himself and got people like Tyke Smith, Darion Kendrick. Darion Kendrick's from Clemson, Tyke Smith's from West Virginia. So he went out and got some players to fill in those voids, and I think that's definitely going to help because those guys are, you know, have a lot of experience playing with against really good talented teams. If you look at the players coming back, though, you have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Julian Rochester, Trayvon Walker, Devontae White, Adam Anderson, Robert Beal, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, Tresman Marshall, Channing Tindall, Quay Walker, Latavius Brini, Lewis Seen, Keely Ringo, and Amir Speed, people like that. I mean, there's obviously more, but I mean, those are a lot of highly talented people, a lot of elite talent that played a lot last year too. There's a lot of experience on this defense, and you know, even if you look at some of the freshmen, there's Xavier Sorley, Small Munden. Those guys are going to come in, probably have play a little bit. They're going to have a huge impact, a year or 2 from now on this Georgia defense. And so you need to look out for some freshmen like that too. But you look at all these guys like Adam Anderson. He was projecting. He's like, if you go back and listen, Azeez Ojulari was saying that Adam Anderson is going to have 10 sacks this season, which is insane. And then Adam Anderson the other day said, my goal is 20. It's like, that's if he even gets half of that, if he just gets 10, this season is going to be insane. Like, Adam Anderson is going to have a huge year if that's true. And you have people like Nolan Smith and Nakobe Dean, like those guys are definitely going to play in the NFL. And you have people like, on that front line, you have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Julian Rochester, Devontae Wyatt, Trayvon Walker kind of there. Like, this defensive line is going to be one of the best, if not the best, defensive line in the country. And that's going to be mainly due to Jordan Davis coming back. There's so much talent. When Jordan Davis is on the field, it makes a huge difference. Like, it really does. This defense is going to be scary good this year. Like, scary good. If you look at some of the numbers, though, from last year, Nakobe Dean led the team with 71 tackles. Azeez Ojulari led the team with 8.5 sacks. But like I said, he went to the NFL, said Adam Anderson is going to have 10 sacks, and Adam Anderson had 6.5. So if you take Azeez Ojulari with 8.5 off, and you give some of those back to Adam Anderson, he could easily have 10 sacks this season. And if he does, Georgia's probably having a pretty good year. The defense is looking scary if that's the case. Um, if also expect Jordan Davis to be the glue that holds this defense together, like I said. Offensive lines can feel his presence when he's on the field. Like it's apparent when he's out there playing, which I already talked about this just a second ago. Kind of jumped the gun, kind of skipped down to this point, but I think he'll play a huge part, not in just the defense, but on the entire team. He's probably one of the top 5 crucial players coming in this year. I think with him coming back, I feel personally, like me, I feel a lot more confident in the team. Like if you were to lose Richard LeCount, Eric Stokes, and Jordan Davis, those are big shoes to fill. Now, like I said, went out and got some guys like Tyke Smith, Darion Kendrick to fill in the back who have some experience, but it's hard to find a Jordan Davis out there in the transfer portal. If that's even possible. Like, he is very important to the team, and he's going to play a huge part in slowing down the run game this season. He's going to make a lot of teams one-dimensional. Now, obviously you have Julian Rochester, who is extremely underrated, and Devontae Wyatt, who's underrated, I think, as well. All of those guys together is going to make a huge difference in stopping the run, making teams one-dimensional. It's going to be a huge part of the game against Clemson. I think being able to stop. Now, they lost Travis Etienne, so one of the best running backs in ACC history, if not in college football ever. Especially, definitely the last couple of years. And they lose him. I'm not too familiar with who they have, coming back. They have that freshman, what's his name? Will Shipley. Will Shipley coming back for Clemson, or coming into Clemson this year, his freshman year. I think this defense is going to play a huge part in trying to slow down that run, making DJ throw it a lot more, making him maybe, make some mistakes, stop the run, pass rush. It's going to be very crucial to the game against Clemson. And, I think this defense is going to end up being one of the best at the end of the year. All right, so those are my 3 predictions. The running back one was, I think, a little bit bolder than the other ones, with the first one being, I think, that Jermaine Burton will have 1,000 yards receiving. It's very possible. You look back at some of the great teams past couple of years, LSU, Alabama. They all have receivers go over 1,000 yards. I think Georgia needs one of those this year. You look at the running backs, like I said, that's the one that's a little bit more bold. 3 running backs go over 400 yards rushing. I definitely think 2 will go over 400 yards rushing, but I think there's a possibility we could have 3 that achieve that as well. And the third one, Georgia will finish the year with the number 1 defense. And, these are my 3 predictions. I think these are all reasonable. I think they all could happen. And I think if they all come true, then Georgia had a very, very good season. Looking back on it, I think if all these come true, look back on it, Georgia had a very successful year. Thanks for watching Dawg Football. Make sure you subscribe down below, comment what are your predictions for Georgia in 2021, and we'll see you next video.